Hey guys, Andrew Perlott with Renaissance Humans, and this is a gigantic hunk of lentils. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that when most people think about their ideal diet, they're not like, let me eat an entire plate of lentils every day. I think that's a pretty good assumption. Particularly if you're like me and you're coming from a more easy to digest, raw-based vegan diet with lots of fruit. This may look like your nightmare. So I've talked before about processing lentils for easier digestion. And today I want to talk about kind of the protein equation, how to actually hit some of those targets that I've been talking about, which correlate with improved immune function, improved general health, better strength and muscle mass, particularly muscle retention during weight loss. So this gigantic plate is, 1,085 grams of lentils. That works out to 1,258 calories and 97.9 grams of protein. Now, the reason that I've measured it out like that is this is exactly the amount of protein that it takes for a 180-pound man to meet that 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight target that is correlated with improved health. And so today we're going to do a little bit of an experiment to kind of explore this concept a little more. By the way, this is not the video that I've promised where I will talk about my own diet and how I've changed that over the years. I'm going to just stick to kind of hitting these targets. This video was meant to go hand in hand with an article that I've written on my website, renaissancehumans.com. I'll put a link in the corner, that little button, and I will also put a link in the video notes. So if we assume that this is how much lentils that you need to eat to hit your target, but you have to remember that that is only 1,258 calories, whereas a person who is 180 pounds and moderately physically active can afford to eat 2,500 calories and not get fat. So the question is, how can we moderate this amount of lentils to something far more reasonable? And we're going to do that by exploring foods of different protein densities and to see how much this mound goes down if we do that, and how much extra free spending calories that you don't have to worry about protein at all you can buy depending on how you make those choices. All right, so we've got our basis of lentils here, and then we're gonna add bananas in. And that's it. We're looking at bananas, which have a protein density of 4.1% of their calories derived from protein. And if we fill the remaining calories that our 180-pound man has with those bananas, how much does this pile go down? Now, eating 1,245 calories from bananas, that's equivalent of eating like roughly 12 medium-sized bananas. That might sound like a lot, but there's only a measly 15 grams of protein in there because bananas are just really not particularly protein dense. Okay, so if you chose bananas with that relatively low protein density, this is all you would get to shave off your massive plate of lentils. So this is 169 grams, or the equivalent of 196 calories. So if you chose the bananas, you bought yourself 196 calories of food that you can eat regardless. You don't have to think about the protein density because you've already met your target. It's not a lot. Maybe that works for you if you love bananas or you don't mind eating tons of lentils. But I think for a lot of people, that isn't going to work. Or let me say it a different way. If you extrapolate it out, foods of a similar protein density to bananas, maybe you love them and you can just substitute those in, or maybe you don't mind foods of a protein density similar to the lentils we've got here, which is 26.9%. So you can kind of make that decision if that's what you want to do. And maybe that's okay for you some days. Maybe some days that's fine for you. But let's explore a different option. What if we look at a different fruit with a little bit higher protein density? Let's talk about cantaloupe, which has a protein density of 8.4% of its calories from protein.
So if you went with the cantaloupe, you ate a huge volume of food because it's really low in caloric density, but it's also higher in protein density. And so you ended up getting about 30 grams of protein, which is about double what you'd have gotten with bananas.
Okay, so moving on to cantaloupe, you can see that by choosing the higher protein fruit as opposed to those bananas, you've saved yourself like an entire bowl of lentils that you have to eat. And you've also bought yourself 341 calories that you can eat however you like. You don't have to care about the protein density of those calories. So a significantly less large pile of lentils. It's still a large amount of lentils, no question. So let's look at a somewhat higher target. What if we choose foods that are similar to lentils in protein density and also quinoa or something similar to quinoa, which is 15.4% of its calories from protein? How much of this lentil dish will you save then?
Because of its increased protein density, quinoa gets 47.8 grams of protein for the same caloric buck as those 15 grams of protein that you got from the bananas.
All right, so if we chose quinoa or a food of similar caloric density to quinoa, you now see that we've got a plate that is a lot less full than it used to be. And we've got a bowl, the lentils saved bowl that is, on the verge of overflowing here. And so that is the equivalent of 613 calories, which you can spend on whatever you want of whatever caloric density because it doesn't matter anymore. So now, all of these comparisons are ridiculous because you're never going to eat a diet of just bananas and lentils, most likely, or just quinoa and lentils. You're going to be eating a lot of other stuff of varying caloric densities. Maybe you eat, a lot of leafy green vegetables like I do, which are of high caloric density, and you can throw the lentils on there, and you can throw in some, whatever you want to eat. It doesn't really matter. My point being that if you kind of start looking at foods as protein density and dilution of that protein density, you'll kind of see that there are easier pathways to get to this without eating a totally ridiculous diet. And I would say that I highly encourage you to get a cheap food scale, use a free program like chronometer.com, and log your food for a few days. See what you're currently eating and see how you can arrange your food choices in a way that digests well for you and feels good and appeals to you from a taste perspective. Most likely, you're not going to eat the same thing day after day. Maybe some days, eating that stark contrast between high protein lentils and low protein bananas, maybe something like that is realistic once in a while. But most days I imagine you'll find something a little bit a different area on the spectrum to use. And I would also just add, if you take a look at that article where I show different protein densities, you'll see the processed food category in which I list things like tempeh and tofu and protein powders. Now, I think I'm going to end up doing a video looking at the higher end protein density foods that are highly processed because there's some different factors that kind of go into that. How much of that food is good for our health, and particularly when you deal with stuff like protein powders, the fact that it's usually polluted with heavy metals, or at least a large part of it is, and I personally wouldn't eat any of that stuff unless you verified from the company via that they've done lab work to verify what their heavy metal content of those protein powders are. The reason I didn't choose any of those, besides the fact that I think they're of questionable health questionable for health is that it kind of gets ridiculous because you've already got a pretty high protein food, and then you take like something like soy protein powder, and the lentils are diluting the protein density of the, of the soy powder. So it's kind of a ridiculous comparison. But yes, you can do those. You can eat a smaller quantity of highly dense protein and eat more of that. People have asked about it, but I would be careful about those choices. Yeah, we'll return to that in another video. So I hope this helped you kind of visualize how to approach this and how I've approached it. I will do a video in the future talking about specifically the meals that I'm eating. But yeah, have a great day.